brain fog, depression, anxiety, slow energy, that is almost always toxic.
Dr. Christopher Shade.
The thoughts that you cultivate, if they're negative thoughts, they're locking you over into the sympathetic fight or flight side, and they're keeping you away from the healing side. When mercury works on the glutamate receptors in the brain, glutamate receptors, when they get hyperactivated, cause anxiety, which blocks detoxification and holds the metal in there. And so it's almost they perpetuate those negative mental states. And when you're in those toxic negative mental states, you can't heal. Inflammation itself is the leading cause of aging. So our focus on controlling the immune system is one of the most fundamentally important things that we can do in our longevity and wellness journeys.
Hello and welcome to the Wellness is Life podcast. I'm your host, Natalia Naila, and today's guest is one of the most respected and innovative minds in the world of detoxification, cellular health, and advanced supplementation. Dr. Christopher Shade is the founder and CEO of Quicksilver Scientific, a PhD chemist who pioneered mercury testing, built one of the only clinical labs for heavy metal analysis, and revolutionized supplement delivery with advanced liposomal and nanoparticle technology. His formulas, ranging from glutathione and methylation to mitochondrial and cognitive support, work on a cellular level and have helped everyone from elite athletes and executives to children with chronic conditions. In this episode, we are getting into how detox really works, why liposomal delivery is such a breakthrough, and what most people get wrong about inflammation, energy, and aging. Christopher, thank you so much to come into my studio here in Hollywood from Colorado.
Happy to be here.
And I actually met you 4 years ago here in Beverly Hills at the Biohackers Conference the Dave Asprey show.
Bulletproof.
Yes, you were standing there along the wall while Dave was speaking, and I was walking by you, and I'm like, oh, that's you, because I already, been taking your product, and I stopped and said hi to you.
And you stopped and said hi, I remember that.
Remember that? Okay,
yes,
cool.
I do.
That was a while ago.
Yeah.
And then I think I saw one of your speeches at one of the other conferences.
Yeah, I was trying to remember I'm like, I totally know this girl.
So thank you for having here, because this conversation, I think it's so important for people to know what detox is, why liposomal, and so much more. Like as me being a health coach, in my protocols, it's really important. One first step is detox. Gut detox, whole body detox, heavy metals, toxicity. I think we do not move the needle if we don't start from there.
No, you're trying to do all this work in the body, and it's like there's a mud layer on top of everything, and you're wanting to move all these needles, and they're just stuck in the mud. And so it's really one of the most fundamental things you can do for your health.
That's true. And before we dive into detox, I wanted to ask you, how do you describe what you do in your own words?
Oh, that's a good one. It's like, I would say, my quick elevator pitch was I make high-tech dietary supplements, just so people will be like, well, what do you mean high-tech? And then you get into this liposomal and nanoparticle-based deliveries. And really what I want to do, you just said move the needle. I want to move the needle. There was always this promise of natural health, like, oh, this plant will do that, this compound will do that, this vitamin will do that. And you take all these pills and you don't really feel anything happening. Maybe over many, many months something's happening, but I want to go in there and hit it right away. I want you to feel it on the first dose. And I want that first week to be opening up all kinds of changes in your body. And so the key was, it was all about bioavailability. How do you get these compounds into the body? And so I'm known for detoxification because my PhD was mercury and toxicity and measuring it. And so I developed these, radical new systems for detoxification. But, then we've moved into cardiometabolic, longevity, immunity, peptides, hormones, using that same delivery system to take all these compounds that people are using and make them really, really work. And that's, I want to have an effect, and that's really the basis of what Quicksilver does, is to take all these things and make them really, really work.
And you've been doing an incredible job.
Thank you.
And so you're called the father of detox. What responsibility comes with being seen as thought leader in this space?
Yeah, I love that. I love you put together father and responsibility. Whether your responsibilities as a father, and I'm a father of two, and the responsibility is to bring really effective systems that are also inherently very safe. And so that was really, I kind of cut my teeth developing detox. At first, it was sort of in the chronic disease, chronic toxicity world, but I spent a lot of time in autism. And they're very sensitive souls, they're very sensitive bodies, and at the time, you couldn't really detox them very well. I mean, you give them little bits of stuff and everything would kind of wind up in the body. So we had to make something that worked really well and worked really seamlessly. How do you make the toxins move where they're stored into the blood, quickly move them through the liver, out with the bile, and then bind them up? And in setting that all up right, and part of that all working is the nanoparticles, the liposomes, being able to go in and peak in the blood in 20 minutes so you can do all this detox, move all this stuff, couple it to bile flow, and then bind it up. And that ended up being very powerful and also very safe. I mean, all these things people talk about with the reactions to detox, it's like they like to say, oh, it's a Herxheimer reaction, and I always say, Herxheimer reaction means you screwed up the detox and you're having all these symptoms because you're not moving everything through right. So communicating how those detox systems work and bringing products that really execute on that in an effective and safe way. That's my responsibility.
So it's interesting that you say that, because I do have a lot of my clients, they go on usually a month to a third on a heavy detox cleaning, and they get that, reaction. And some of them actually quit because it's so bad.
Oh, yeah.
They cannot take it.
Yeah.
So you're saying that someone on Quicksilver detox, it would be much milder and safer?
Yeah, you're moving more toxins, but in a safer way with many less reactions or side effects of it. And that's when you take something that triggers, something like lipoic acid, it triggers the cells to dump toxins out into the blood. Mm-hmm. So where do they go then? And if you don't have the liver open and drain, so it's pulling things in, doing any further metabolism and draining the toxins out with the bile flow. So you have to couple that movement from the tissues into the blood to the movement in the liver and moving out with the bile, and then following up behind that with a binder to pick it all up. So what goes wrong in all this? Most people, especially in our sort of stressed out day and age, and all this Wi-Fi and all these toxins we're exposed to, you get a lock in the gallbladder. And it's actually not in the gallbladder, it's the transition from the liver into the bile tree and draining all this. And so if that's locked and you push these toxins out of the blood, they start to go into the liver, they can't drain out, it freaks out the liver and it dumps them back into the blood. And then they circulate around.
And that's how you get sick.
Yeah, exactly. And the same forces that are blocking that up, the liver pathways up, are blocking up the kidney pathways. And so that all circulates around and tends to go to areas that are already damaged and inflamed. It'll go up to the brain, the toxins, and you'll get what's called neuroinflammation from that. And then the toxins start coming out through the skin, and you'll get sort of like itching, and then you get rashes. You've got the brain fog, all that going on. You might feel kind of feverish. That's all kicking toxins out, and they just start recirculating. And those are the problems that people get into. But if you couple the movement of the toxins to the movement of the bile, and that's as simple as using all of the European traditional herbal bitters, the Swedish bitters, the bitters that the Germans do. I mean, all the European cultures have these things. Those open up that bile flow. So if you get that bile flow going, when you move the toxins, and everything moves out. And then again, you come with the binders so you don't reabsorb. And all those symptoms that people get are not coupling all of these. It's like a relay race. The toxin goes here, then it goes there, then it goes there, then it goes there. And when it's blocked halfway along, this stuff just circulates and you have those symptoms.
That's why your formula is almost like a choreographed. You have
Yes, it's totally choreographed. I love that
one
word.
after another one, which is walk me through.
Yeah, so you'll take the push-catch liver detox system is some combination of liquid, liposomal, nanoemulsions to move all the toxins. So you might start with like a glutathione or the ergothione product, and then you're going to add in the liver sauce and the kidney care and maybe some phospholipid. So you're opening up liver, you're opening up kidney, you've got the glutathione in there to conjugate toxins and start moving it. You've got some phospholipid that helps the bile flow and helps the cells deal with these movements of toxins. And so you take all these liquids and 30 minutes later, you take your binder. And all of the things that we've tested with these delivery systems, all the compounds that you take peak in the blood around 20 minutes. And so they get in the blood, they activate this movement of all these toxins. And like in the liver sauce is our bitter X products. You've got the bitter compounds in there along with these NRF2 upregulators that turn up the cellular detox. So you move everything, dump it with the bile. Half an hour later, you come in with the binders and you pick it all up so you don't reabsorb it. So that's the choreography. And then a half hour after the binders, you can eat if you're going to eat, or if you're fasting, you can keep fasting. So you do that, and it creates one little coherent cycle of detox.
And do you recommend actually, and I believe it's 2 weeks detox on the catch push?
Well, no, we actually,
days?
push catch, if you do it like advanced push catch, that's a month. Now,
that's
the
a month.
simple
Okay.
push catch, one bottle of liver sauce and the binders with it is a 2-week protocol if you're doing twice a day. Yeah, and it depends. So I say, I like a period of formal detox where people are going to go in for 1, 2, 3 months straight, and then intermittent after that, and how are you going to refresh and keep that going? Now, some people keep it around almost like a supplement, and a couple times a week they'll do one of these cycles of push catch because it's a discrete little cycle of detox, and it can be done once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day. You do half doses, full doses, double, triple doses, any way that you want to do it. Some people will keep it and do it over the weekend. Me, I'll do cycles of push catch couple times a week, especially after I travel. I come back,
Nice.
There's a lot of toxins, and I do them with my infrared sauna. In fact, if this is my bed, my bedroom, my clear light sauna is right there. I wake
Love
up,
that.
turn that thing on, go have coffee, then, take my liposomes, pop in there, and then take my binders, and so we call it push sauna catch.
Because a lot of people, first of all, they don't believe in detox, especially doctors.
Oh, I know, it's so silly.
But also they say, well, I've done detox years ago. They think it's like if you did
It's
it
like a
one time.
once a lifetime thing.
And they think they've cleaned up. They don't need to do that. I believe, like myself, like you say, I'm actually on a weekly detox myself. Not like a heavy one, but like I always take my binders.
Yeah.
I take charcoal.
Those are the things you're making part of your lifestyle. And that's the lifestyle supplements, like the bitters, the bitter X or bitters number 9. That's how I teach. Like that's your lifestyles. Yeah, after you eat, that's opening up. That's opening up detox every time you take it. It's also improving your digestion, and so it's like all the Quicksilver girls, all the people who work there, the women who work there, they all keep that in their purse. When
me
we go
too.
out,
Digestive
when we're all
and
out,
bitters.
somebody pulls out the bitters, and it's like. And then the binders, totally a lifestyle thing. And, you can take some
like
at night.
you say, do infrared sauna. You take the binder before or after you go into sauna? After.
There's a lot of ways to do it.
Yeah.
You kind of can't screw it up.
Right.
But I push, sauna, catch. And that works super well. And then, some of the things people don't think about, like, so many people have had the experience that you go for a massage and you feel like crap afterward, and you're relaxed, and then you're like, what's going on? And that's pushing all this stuff out of the lymphatics and the tissues and into circulation, and you need binders. And so we sell these little 4-pack of binders with a little magnesium. We were like, manual therapists, any massage or any of the physical therapy, to do that afterward. People do these iron foot baths. You should do binders after that, because it's actually, the iron foot baths totally work and totally different than everybody thinks. They think that everything's going down into the water and all those colors. Those are the metals from the electrodes mixing with these elements in the sweat from your feet that make all those different colors.
I was just curious, why does it always like different dark colors?
Yeah, and they, I have a woman who's like the foot bath whisperer, and she looks into it and sees what's going on. She's a mystic, but people think the toxins are there, but actually the toxins, the iron foot bath is working on your autonomics to relax them and release the toxins. In fact, years ago, in the beginning of running Quicksilver Scientific, I had this woman, Bonnie, who actually works around LA a lot too. She came and did these foot baths with me and my wife, and I measured our blood before and after, and we're looking at heavy metals in it, and we're looking at mercury, and the mercury levels rose in the blood. Higher at the end of the bath than it was at the beginning. And then the next day it came back down. So what that's doing is it's getting your tissues to release. Because part of the detoxification problem is things get stored in the tissues, and you have to release them out into circulation so that your liver and your kidneys and your skin can take them and dump them out. And so that's a lot of when you get to energy medicine and stuff, there's a lot of lockups in the autonomic nervous system and a lot of emotional patterns that are locking things in and locking toxins into certain tissues. And so these autonomic releases get toxins out of the tissues into circulation where you can work them out of the system. But if they're doing that, then you need to support that detox. And, you could do push foot bath catch. You can just do bitters foot bath catch, or at the very least, take the binders at the end.
That's nice. So when did you start your company?
Well, actually, quite a long time ago. It was 2006, but we were first doing environmental mercury testing, and I wanted to move over into doing clinical. And then in 2008-9, there was the housing crash, the housing bubble crash, and the recession that came with that. And I was about to get some more investment money around the environmental side, and all that dried up. And one person said to me, the only industry that grew during the Great Depression was healthcare. And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it now. I stopped taking all environmental samples, and I met Dietrich Klinghardt and Hal Huggins, who got me introduced into the integrative medicine, metal detoxification world. And it just took off. People were looking for these solutions. They were looking for the testing, better testing. They were looking for better detox. And there was that demand, and we just grew right into it, which I was so happy about. I mean, if you look at my life path to get here, everybody's like, oh, this PhD, he must be, this square guy. I was an organic biodynamic farmer before I got my PhD. So I was into integrative health. I was into, everybody's in the GI microbiome, but that was all soil microbiome. So I was really familiar with thinking about all these integrated systems and how they come together in an organic farming context. And so it was easy to go over into this clinical application. And so I was really happy to do that. And I'm still thrilled. I mean, I'm just so blessed to just be exactly who I should be. Doing this is exactly expressing who I am all the time.
That's
and
beautiful.
I get to make great things that help people. And
you are.
Yeah, and it's just great.
Let's talk about liposomal.
Yeah.
Why was this the breakthrough that changed the way you do in your company?
Yeah, so I, was doing mercury testing, and then we started with, the first product was called IMD, Intestinal Metal Detox. And that was a binder that was super specific for heavy metals, especially mercury, cadmium, and arsenic. And, at the time, people as mercury binders were using chlorella. And this stuff that I made. It was actually a variation on stuff we used to use in graduate school to collect mercury out of water samples. And so you get these little pieces of silica and you put these high-strength mercury-binding thiols on there. And chlorella has good binding ability, but not a lot of it. So this little 100 milligram scoop of IMD does the same as like 90 chlorella. And I remember talking to Joe Mercola, I was showing him this stuff. He's like, I just take chlorella. And I was like, you got to take 90 chlorella to match what this little scoop does, That's not going to go so well in your gut. And so, and Klinghart, used to use chlorella, and then he picked up ours and he called it microsilica. And so that was that really opened up that liver to GI pathway, cleared the mercury out of the GI because the mercury in the GI from the amalgams would block all that stuff. All right, so I was like, why is this even working this way? And that led me to researching the glutathione system. And it's glutathione in the cells conjugating to mercury, and then there's enzymes that work with it and transporters, and it makes its way down. So I'm like, okay, I got this door open, and I got the binder on there. Now I got to feed at a cell level. So I got to get glutathione into the cell. And glutathione capsules are going to be broken down. You're going to absorb very little of that. Most of it's going to turn to amino acids. And so people are doing IVs, intramuscular, nebulizing, intranasal, but none of those were supplement paths. And I'm like, I got to have a supplement path. And a friend of mine, Steve Coral, who was my holistic dentist at the time, and he said, did you hear about liposomes? So I'm like, haven't heard of them. And so I started looking at some of the liposomes that were out there. I'm like, oh, this totally will solve the problem for me, but they weren't very good. There was only one that was pretty good, and then when I tried that, I was like, whoa, I totally feel that. And I tried to work with them to be able to private label theirs, and it wasn't really working. I needed them to change some stuff in the formula that they didn't want to do anything. So I started doing it myself and got totally obsessed on it, and happened to have a guy in Boulder County who was really good at those kind of things and helped get me situated and sold me some of the equipment for both making them and evaluating their quality, their size, and the population of the different particles and their stability. And so that's how I got going with that. We made liposomal glutathione, we made liposomal vitamin C, C with lipoic acid, and GABA. Those were our first ones.
Yeah, I remember that.
And the EDTA. And took off with that. And it was like, boom, that is really doing the job. And we got so good at doing them. They were so much better than everything that was on the market. We just started making more and more, around detox. But then we got into CBD and different aspects of CBD, which we use in detox, but you also use it in all kinds of other things. We got into cardiometabolic stuff, blood sugar control. We got into immunity, especially during COVID. And then just kept expanding and expanding.
You guys are
Eventually,
so huge now.
Yeah.
Everything's like, hold your horses there, because I have so many questions before we go into peptides. But you're from Colorado, and so you're a whole corporation and a manufacturer. Everything is called in Colorado.
Yeah, we're totally vertically integrated. In Louisville, Colorado, we have a 60,000 square foot facility.
I would love to visit one day.
Oh, you have to come over.
I have to come.
It's a beautiful place, and we host we host doctors there. We host all kinds of stuff. But we make everything except for one or two of the capsules get made outside. Mm-hmm.
So most supplements talk about absorption. You guarantee bioavailability. So what does that actually mean in practice?
Yeah, so the definition of bioavailability is the portion of some active substance that makes it into the blood when you ingest it, so that it can have an effect in the body. And so when you do capsules, which is like 95% of the supplement world out there,
true.
You're relying on the capsule breaking open and the powders in there to disperse and then go across the GI layer and get into circulation. And for certain compounds, like take something like berberine, it's like less than 1% of it is getting in there. Things like quercetin, very low percents are going in there. Glutathione, you actually break it down and don't get it in. Some things like vitamin C absorb fairly well. B vitamins absorb fairly well. Most of the vitamins have transport mechanisms to get in. Occasionally those are broken, like with vitamin D, and so the nanoparticle gets past that. So the liposomes and these different nanoparticles don't need the transporters that are usually there. Everything is already dissolved, and they're held in these little nano-sized spheres that are carriers that go right across the oral mucosa into the capillaries.
Because you have
in
to
your mouth.
hold it for 30
and that's
seconds.
we want you to hold it for 30, even 90 seconds, longer
in
the
your
better.
mouth, so it
and
goes
then
straight into your
swallow.
bloodstream.
Right into your blood. I mean, when we do these pharmacokinetic studies, that's how much goes into the blood over time. In 2 minutes, we can see the compound in there. 5 minutes, it's gotten, it's really coming up. And then anywhere between 20, 25 minutes, it's at a peak in the blood. And then it decays after that according to how fast your body breaks it down. But it doesn't need the GI. So this is as close as you can get to an injection, which was the idea. And then we get into peptides. Everybody's all these needles, and it's like,
which I do a lot of needles, and I have to say I
but
love
it's like-
peptides.
it's like, love peptides, don't like the needles.
For some people, a lot of people are still like, oh, don't talk to me about needles. So which you have a great new product, a BPC 157, and along with GHK copper.
Yep.
Is it only
And we
two
have
peptides?
BPC 157 with KPV and BPC
okay.
157 with TB500.
Wow, which is great for tissue rejuvenation, for
Oh,
gut
yeah.
healing, for immune
especially
support.
the
Yes.
KPV totally seals the gut barrier. Leaky gut, leaky blood-brain
I need to
barrier.
try that one.
Oh, that one's really fantastic. And especially when people are doing detoxes or they're coming back from some sort of illness, that leaky GI layer brings what's called endotoxin in the body, which winds up inflammation, it blocks detoxification, blocks healing, does all these negative things to you. And so that KPV to seal that layer while you're trying to clear everything out
It's beautiful.
is just
And
fantastic.
I love that you actually put it all those three in one formulation.
Yep.
Beautiful. Let's talk about the copper peptides. I was talking to one of the specialists in the field of peptides, and he actually recommended me saying, hey, just do GHK by itself, not the copper one, because if we don't really need inject copper in ours because we're getting that already from food and other things. And if you have too much copper, it could actually backfire. What are your thoughts on that?
There is a paranoia around copper that's a little unfounded. When I got into this industry, it was a real big thing, and they were making all of these multi-minerals with no copper in it and stay away from copper. Copper can be a toxic element, especially if your bile flow isn't working and your methylation processes aren't good. But it's also an essential element that does so many different things in the body. And so I think we're a little too afraid of supplementing copper. Now, you get to the copper GHK. So copper GHK is something that you make in your body. Actually, you make GHK, and it gets copper from copper that's circulating in the blood. It makes this complex, and that complex docks onto various receptors and turns up processes of regeneration. It's really big in wound healing, extracellular matrix regrowth. It's also a big immune modulator. So one of the biggest things around aging is inflammaging, which is the wrong chronic driving inflammatory pathways. There's something called NF-kappa B that gets activated, and copper helps bring that back and have proper inflammation, copper GHK. And copper GHK also helps the epigenetic changing to a more youthful gene set. So you can take copper GHK directly, which is what does it. If you have to take a ton of that because it's building extracellular matrix and connective tissue, so people who have like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, the hypermobility, they need tons of that, and then they start getting into a copper excess thing. And so there's a lot of buffering systems in the body. But if you're taking a ton of the copper GHK, then you should just go to straight GHK. And we'll probably release a straight GHK soon. But, if you're not taking a ton, it's not an issue.
Yeah. You also have one in serum for the face.
Yeah, we do. We have two. So
Oh.
we have the facial beauty serum, which has the copper GHK, a couple of antioxidants, and estriol and a little bit of estradiol. They're estrogens. They call it like lotus estrogens is what Amy Killen calls it, because estrogen is responsible for skin thickness, and so when the skin on the face is thinning, the estrogen plumps it all up, and that's really great. But then we have one without those hormones, and instead we put some senolytics in there. And so I use the one without the estrogens, and women use the ones with the estrogens. And young women, they don't necessarily
need
want the
that.
estrogens.
Yeah. It's for
I was experimenting taking using large amounts of it to see what happens, and I got some nipple sensitivity. I was like, oh, they hurt.
You
all right,
did?
that's
You're
enough.
just
I
kidding.
did. I totally did.
That is hilarious. By the way, you're drinking it water, hydrogen water, and you do have a product that is called molecular hydrogen pills, which I absolutely
Elite.
love. Let's talk about why molecular hydrogen is so important for energy and just aging and charging the cells.
Yeah, hydrogen's a real simple, tiny molecule, the smallest one that's there, and yet it has a profound effect. So normally people are making hydrogen in their GI tracts if they have the right flora, but some people don't grow those bacteria that make that. And those people need hydrogen coming in this hydrogen water aspect. And so when you dissolve these tablets in the water, you get this big cloud of little micro bubbles of hydrogen gas, and you drink those and they go right into the blood right away. They diffuse right away, and you get this peak, and then they go away. And at that peak of the hydrogen, it actually stimulates a bunch of the processes that we really like AMPK activity. AMPK is what we activate when we exercise, when we fast, we're water fasting, intermittent fasting, when we go on keto diets, and that turns us into a recycling machine. And so that turns up autophagy, it turns up blood sugar control. And so it's got all this metabolic and longevity wellness to it. And so you also have some NRF2 activity, you have some free radical scavenging. And what people screw up with hydrogen often is they'll get these bottles and make their hydrogen water, and they'll drink it throughout the day.
No, you have to drink it right away.
Right away. You want a peak in the blood. And when you do the tablets, you want it right away because that cloud of gas is in there. And even the stuff that's not dissolved in the water, but it's a little gas bubbles, just go right through your stomach. And so, you want that before the hydrogen goes away, but it's also you want all of it in right away, and you want the hydrogen level in the blood to go way up and then come back down to nothing. So you don't want to activate these pathways all the time. You want to just punch them. So once a day, maybe twice a day. Yeah, in the morning is great.
I have a funny story. I actually, when I was doing your protocol push catch protocol, and I bought one of those molecular hydrogen pills, and it was a while ago. And it was one first pill. It was in the evening time. I had no idea that you were supposed to take it in the daytime. I read right before bed. I put one, and it took a while to dissolve. I'm like, you know what? It's okay. I'm going to sleep. I'm just chalked it up, and that pill went right into my gut. I went to sleep, and I could not sleep for 4 hours. My whole body and cells were wired.
Yeah.
They were like sizzling. They were just alive. And I've never experienced anything like that. I was like, oh my God. First of all, I was like, oh my God, maybe I got poisoned. What's happening with me? And I'm just laying there. I'm like, it's okay. But the feeling was kind of cool too.
Yeah, you just didn't want it at night. And so you would be somebody who's not making hydrogen gas in your GI, your microbiome, that's not the mix of things that you have going on in there. And those people have radical experiences. And, the pathways for hydrogen are very, very old. It's a very primordial thing in our biology to have exposure to hydrogen. And so it was probably waking up all kinds of processes. I mean, they don't even understand them all. They're doing, most of the research is done in Japan. And it's just amazing how much it does. Some of the coolest research around that is around cancer and chemotherapy.
Yep.
And if you pre-treat the body, you start loading hydrogen in before the chemo, you get over the chemo way better. One of the problems with detox and chemo is you don't want to detox the chemo. And so this is just the right signaling to make your body accommodate the chemo without stopping its cytotoxic effect on the tumor, but keeping the chemo from killing you. And so if you're doing like our detox, we'll be like, no, if you're doing chemo, you got to let that settle down and then you detox it all out. But hydrogen you're able to do at the same time. The other cool thing about hydrogen, they call it an exercise mimetic. And it has a lot of the same effects as exercise. That's what I was saying. AMPK activation, a little bit of NRF2 activation.
It's exercise of your cells.
Yeah, it is.
It's true.
And
I felt it.
Yeah,
and
it's
all
such a
the
good-
hospitals in Japan and Korea, they have hydrogen devices.
Yeah.
So like you say, they start all their patient with hydrogen breathing, water.
Yeah.
I actually bought one of my first hydrogen devices 10 years ago from Korea. I had to order.
The
It was
Koreans
like
are big.
$600 for this
Yeah.
little bottle.
Yeah,
And so yeah,
Yeah, it's funny. Now you can just throw a
Now
tablet
it's
in
a
there and get
tablet.
5 times more hydrogen from your tablet. The bottles are cool, but then people tend to drink it all throughout the day instead of just pulsing it like that. But the hydrogen also for TBIs. And now in Europe, a lot of the soccer clubs have hydrogen inhalation machines on the side. When these guys get knocked out, they put them on breathing hydrogen, and that protects it against that runaway damage that happens.
I
in there.
breathe 4 times a week in my house, hydrogen brown gas.
Great. Yeah, I just got a hydrogen breathing machine
it's
from the guys
amazing.
at Water Wellness.
It's
Alex
great.
Tavarna, and so I just got it at the office, so I got to set it up at home and start
I'll teach
using
you a
it.
nice little stack.
Oh,
I do
cool.
the hydrogen machine,
Yeah.
a red light therapy, and I
Yeah.
sit on my Aeon chair from Lawrence Swenson, where it puts your all your ions into negative
yeah.
state instead of positive. And I
Yeah.
do that stack at night before I go to sleep.
That's a great one.
My aura ring, it's like the next day I would say it's a rock star.
Wow.
My all markers are so amazing.
That's great.
Yeah.
And then some people tag on methylene blue.
Oh yes,
there
methylene
too,
blue. But I
especially
don't know
with
if
the
you want to
red.
take methylene blue at night though.
I might
Can
be a
you?
little stimulating.
Yeah, so-
I've done it. There's some people it wires
Do
them
you
up a
guys
little
have
bit.
methylene blue in your?
No.
No.
We've there's transcriptions guys.
Yeah, I
have
know,
those
but you
little
haven't
ones,
developed
and
that one
we're
yet?
starting to sell it. No, in fact, my one of my friends sells these little bottles of liposomal methylene blue, and he's been all over me to make it and sell it. In the beginning, especially before this Trump administration, I'm like, I don't really want to get in front of the FDA trying to sell methylene blue as a dietary supplement. Like, what are we supplementing? Blue? We're supplementing the blue in blueberry. It's like methylene blue is not a supplement. But it's a great tool. And it's also like you get one speck of methylene blue powder like on the floor, and then it gets a little water on it. It's like a big blue dye.
Yeah.
It is a blue dye.
It is a dye,
And
yeah.
so all of a sudden, my manufacturing guys, everything's blue, and they're all getting mad at me and stuff. And I'm like, I just don't want to get into that party. I got
Makes
plenty of
sense.
other stuff to do.
Keep the other people doing it.
Yeah, let other people.
And okay, so let's talk about more glutathione. There's injection glutathione, which a lot of people into like IVs and pushes. And how do you? Because I know the glutathione doesn't stay in the bloodstream long. It's like about up to 1 hour and then goes away.
Yeah, and so it's not really raising your blood glutathione levels. In fact, some of our Japanese doctors they took 5 people in an IV and 5 people in liposome, and it was 600 milligrams on either side. And they gave it to them, and then they tested their blood levels 6 hours later because they wanted to see how much sticks around. And there was twice as much. The blood glutathione levels 6 hours after the dose in the liposome side were 30% increased from baseline, and the IV was only 15%
Yep.
up from baseline.
That's what I
So
hear.
the liposome, even though all went in with the IV, it didn't integrate into the system the way the liposomes do, because the liposomes, they get in, they circulate longer, and the liposomal structure is the same as the cell membrane structure, and they merge with the cell membranes and are able to get into the cells and really, because that's the liposome thing. You have bioavailability getting into the blood and then helping it get from the blood into the cells, and that's these phospholipids merging with the cell membranes.
Great. I love that.
And then, with IV, you get this big radical change to the blood chemistry for a couple of hours. And so, like in the Parkinson's cases, they would give like 3-gram IV, and these shaking people would stop shaking. And all that glutathione in the blood is changing a bunch of the redox aspects of the blood, but then it goes away. And so, what we want, and then if you say you're doing detox that way, you have a day where you detox a lot, and then the other days, what are you doing? So, we believe in the every day, the liposomes coming in there, filling up the system, keeping it moving out. And you can couple IV and liposome together, and we do that a lot. In fact, I'm going to an IV conference where we're advocating for that. Come in, get your IV, big boost of everything, and go home with your liposomes.
Okay, makes sense. And because I know glutathione is one of the king molecules in the world that actually goes into mitochondria and repairs.
Well, it's a big. The mitochondria have a big glutathione system where they're using glutathione as an antioxidant, as a protein repair, as detoxification, and they have all these enzymes that use it all these different ways. And so the glutathione system in the mitochondria is essential for keeping a healthy mitochondria. The mitochondria, you know why when it's cold outside, we're warm, right? So we're 37 Celsius when it's 15 out there. How does that happen? Because the mitochondria are running at 50 degrees Celsius. They're hot little guys. And they have all this oxygen breakdown going on in there, yet they're more highly antioxidant, more reduced than the rest of the cell, the cytosol. And so they need a really high-grade, interleaved antioxidant system in there. And when glutathione levels go down or consumed, the mitochondria become very susceptible to being damaged by the reactions that they're making within the mitochondria and all the reactive oxygen species.
It's interesting. Do you say when people feel cold, like cold feet, and they constantly feel cold, like even in the warm weather, they're like, oh, I'm feeling cold, I need to put sweater. Maybe they need to upload their glutathione to up their mitochondria.
It could be a mitochondrial issue. And the mitochondrial issue can have a lot of bases, and glutathione could be one of them. You may not be taking the things that stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis. Like if your NAD levels are low, your mitochondrial efficiency is going to be low, and your mitochondrial density is going to be low. That's how many mitochondria per cell. There could be hundreds, NAD platinum.
How important is NAD?
NAD is one of the most important things, right there with glutathione, if not even higher than it.
Interesting.
Because when NAD goes down, your glutathione synthesis goes down. So NAD is this molecule that's really turning solar energy into cellular energy. And it's as you're breaking down carbohydrates and fats, you're moving these electrons out of the citric acid cycle. And those electrons are taken by NAD into the electron transport chain. Now, if it just did that, that would be cool. But NAD is the thing that's driving sirtuin signaling, and sirtuins are these molecules that are turning on and off different pathways. And when you have a lot of activity of the sirtuins, you have a more youthful biochemical pathway. But one of the biggest things they regulate is mitochondrial efficiency and mitochondrial biogenesis, which is making more mitochondria. I'm getting hotter just talking about this. This is what people say, Chris, you've got a very high mitochondrial density. And that's how many mitochondria per cell. And that's how much cellular energy you can make. And that's really a huge, huge thing to health. And that's why we supplement them.
Yeah, I know when people do NAD, let's say now we're in the peptides or like, especially in the peptide NAD, oh my God, that's a fast delivery. Injectable. You do that. You feel like a rock star. People right away like, wow, I've got this energy and, paired with glutathione and then, methylated B12, you're like unstoppable.
I mean, that
I think it's a great little energy
and that's
kick.
I'm glad you brought up the methylated B12 because when you're driving NAD, when NAD activates the sirtuins, it turns to this form called nicotinamide. And if that builds up, it actually blocks the sirtuin. So you have to get rid of it. And you do that by donating methyl groups from SAMe. And peeing out as methyl nicotinamide, but that generates homocysteine. So driving NAD cycles actually depletes methyl groups and increases homocysteine, which is then a problem. It's a pro-inflammatory, it's a cardiotoxin. So you have to regenerate the homocysteine back to methionine through methionine and folate pathways. And one of the easiest ways to drive that is with methyl B12.
Yep.
But TMG, B2, all the methylated B vitamins drive that. But sort of a one-stop shop is methyl B12.
Oh, yeah, I love that, especially when I do my injections NAD, B12.
Yeah.
When I feel like I am low in energy, like I know, like, oh my God, like I am literally need those shots. Like NAD,
Yep.
B12, literally within like 3-4 hours of like, yeah, like.
Yeah, exactly.
like,
And that's what the
alive.
NAD platinum product is NMM as the immediate precursor to NAD, and then methyl B12, a couple other methylated B vitamins with it, and some sirtuin activators, quercetin and resveratrol. So that's all together in that sublingual
Beautiful.
product.
Can we actually touch on why methylated B12 compared to any B12? People still don't understand why is methylation because some people have a gene
Yeah.
that is not activated.
MTHFR
And
genes.
yes, can we talk about that really?
Yeah, so methylation, people methylate it at different rates, and methylation is essential for driving homocysteine, back to methionine. It's essential for a lot of the processes that go along with B vitamins. It's essential for controlling the genome, how you're methylating, turning things on and off. And when people have poor methylation, there's a lot of biochemical processes that get held back or retarded. A lot of neurotransmitters rely on that, so you can tend to go into depression cycles and low energy cycles when your methyl groups are low. And the B vitamins function into that. The old B12 we used to use was cyano B12, which is actually a cyanide group attached to the B12. And then you would take it, and then your body would methylate it to methyl B12. Then we started getting straight methyl B12, and this was a better form of B12, especially for people who are under methylators. And then there's hydroxy B12, which is a non-methylated, but it doesn't have a cyanide group. It's a hydroxy group. So some people over-methylate, some people under-methylate. Like under-methylators, when they're symptomatic, they tend to be tired, a little depressed, yet they're very ambitious people. So they're ambitious, tired, depressed. And then over-methylators, like the extreme of that, are like cutters, like they're sort of like wired and go-go. In fact, if you take too much, if you're an under-methylator, you take too many methyl groups all at once, you tend to get like manic. And then you can take niacin to block that. So niacin, remember I said the NAD is consuming methyl groups. So NAD is a high form of niacin. So niacin and the methylated Bs are in this balance using methyl groups. And so it's important to be balanced in methylation.
Right. So your methyl charge plus formula is like a brain in a bottle. Why? Going back to why is methylation such a big deal?
Yeah, and so we have methyl B complex, which is kind of like net pro-methylation, but not super pro. And then we have one that's called methyl charge that was meant to go with the NAD. That's like a super methyl forward. And so for certain people, if you're a low methylator, you'll have more brain neurotransmitter issues. In fact, there's a friend of mine who, he's in this family where there's a lot of Parkinson's, and he's always sort of on the edge of these Parkinsonian symptoms. And when he started doing NAD, he felt great, but he wasn't having enough of the methylation, and he was having neurological issues a little bit. There was a little bit of shaking. There was a little phasing out, like, wait, what was I just talking about? And we just brought up the methylation, and all that went away.
Wow.
And so that's the balanced methylation and NAD sirtuin activity.
So what are your go-to products for people who want to age better, not just longer?
Oh, it depends what sex you are. Yeah. So we have a lot of longevity stuff, and we can unpack, like the NAD and AMPK charts, or 2 inactivators, senolytic things, and then the peptides. But then we also have hormones, and that's a huge longevity thing. And we're just getting into male hormone products, and most of those, because it's testosterone, that'll go through compounding pharmacies. So, like, we have this partner, Premier Compounding in Florida. They'll do our sublingual testosterone. You'll start seeing a lot more of that. But in women, we evaluated all the laws that were out there, and we're like, we can do a whole female bioidentical hormone replacement system in a supplement format, and so for the androgens, that would be DHEA and testosterone, DHT, we give a product called DHEA Plus.
Which I love that one. I have that one at home.
I know.
Yes,
it's amazing. It'll drive your
great.
DHEA levels super high and your testosterone levels super high, but you won't turn any into estrogen, so it has estrogen control in there. So it's got DHEA and pregnenolone as the hormones driving it. Then the nutraceutical package is chrysin, which protects against estrogen formation so that you can control your estrogen separately with the topicals. And DIM, which helps with the estrogen metabolism. And then a couple of different adaptogens. There's a raw fermented white Korean ginseng, dong quai, and maca. So that's DHEA plus. And then in the consumer line, it's called Core Hormone Support. Same formula, but lower DHEA concentration. And that's amazing, for younger women who are having adrenal burnout. DHEA is a big adrenal hormone. And then older women, the DHEA levels and the testosterone levels are going down, totally replaces them. And then so for a woman, you need the androgens, you're going to need progesterone, and you're going to need estrogens. And so then we do a topical nano serum of bioidentical progesterone, and then we have topical nanoserums of estriol, estradiol, and the blend of the two called Biest.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and the nanoserums are really great. The FDA laws allow topical cosmetics to have a certain amount of those hormones, up to a fairly large percent, but they're usually not absorbed. When you get creams from a compounding pharmacy, they talk about it being micronized. That stuff's not dissolved. A little bit's dissolved in it, most of it's powder, and so the cream's sucking some of it through, but you leave all this residue on there. With the nanoserums, you have everything dissolved into these nanoemulsion particles that just travel right through, and you get very good absorption.
Beautiful. I will recommend all my ladies
Yeah,
who need that. That's amazing. Also, your cardiovascular line feels really dialed in. So what makes it different from any other?
No, the cardio, we had this product called Performance Cardio, and that was a bunch of Chinese and Western herbs, danshen, hawthorn, ginkgo, things that are good for upregulating enos and endothelial nitric oxide synthase, and it had some citrulline in there as a substrate for it. And then COVID comes, and I go and measure my blood pressure, just like getting a COVID check, and I'm 155 over 105, and I'm like, yeah, that's how I felt funny. It turned out, I had Lyme and all the chronic infections going on that were driving up my blood pressure. But I come from a family lineage of high blood pressure, so I'm like, oh, finally this has happened. So I gotta get my blood pressure down. So performance cardio wasn't really changing that. And then you had things on the market already, like Neo 40 and the NO2U and these different lozenges of nitrates and nitrites. Then you had arteriosil with this rhamnon sulfate, which was a seaweed extract, right? And so there was all these different products. So I started I was taking the performance cardio, I was taking the tablets, the lozenges, I was taking the capsules of the nitrates and nitrites, I was taking arteriosil, and it was doing something, but it wasn't doing it all. I'm like, I got to pack all this stuff together. So I took that performance cardio base, added in a specific blend of nitrate and nitrite, and we can go back to like how those different those work to develop or to synthesize nitric oxide in the body. And that, when I added those in, then my blood pressure would drop like 20 points in like 45 minutes. And it would stay, but it would come back up. It would go down, but then it would come back up in like 3-4 hours. And I'm like, So I had to get the ratio of nitrite, which is immediate, and nitrate, which is slow. And I had to add that seaweed extract in, the rhamnant sulfite. It's an extract of monostroma nitidum. And there are these sulfated sugars that build into the endothelial glycocalyx. It's like, they look like a layer of grass coming off the inside of the blood vessels and the endothelium. And that grass in there is made up of all these sulfated things like, heparin sulfate, chondroitin sulfate. It's all stuff that your extracellular matrix is built out of. So it's an extracellular matrix lining inside the vessel that protects it from all the inflammatory forces. And these sulfated seaweed things build it up really, really well. So I had this blood pressure was dropping, then coming back, and I put in that seaweed extract, and it dropped, and it stayed. And, that drop will last 24 to 36 hours now.
Oh, wow.
And so it is a fantastic
Which particular
product.
is that one?
Cardio Elite.
Okay.
And if you have hypertension, it'll drop you down. It's dose dependent too. If you do one dose, maybe it'll take you down 15 points. If you do 2, it'll take you down 30. 3 could take you down 40. But if you're normotensive, it doesn't drop you at all. And that's the nice thing about using the nitric oxide system for blood pressure control versus the vasopressin like pharmaceuticals, which if you take too much, you have this precipitous drop in blood pressure. So, for instance, I went to see a cousin of mine, and he was running 180 over 120. I was like, oh my God.
My friend is having that right now, actually.
And then I had him doing 2 to 3 teaspoons twice a day, and in very little time he was down under 140 over 90, and so it works great for blood pressure control, just short-term and long-term. It's building up the health of the vasculature, and there's all these long-term studies on the nitrates and the seaweed extract, so it's just getting better all the time. So it's short-term and long-term, but if you just use it as a pre-workout, it's amazing. I was doing this sequence where I get on my treadmill, I'd start running, and my pulse would go up over between 160 and 170, which is really too high. And then if I get off the treadmill, take the Cardio Elite, it would take like 15 minutes to go in, and my pulse would drop down around 140 and just stay there. And if I took it before, it would never go over 140. And I had a couple other people reproduce that, and it's like, so it's great for pre-workout to open things up.
It's really cool. And I know that all of your product, you need to keep it in the refrigerator.
Not all of it.
Not all, but most
the
of them. No?
And it's maybe 30% of them.
And what's the shelf life it's very short too?
Well, it depends on the product.
Once you open it, it's
everything
2-3
depends
months
on the product.
Yeah.
So glutathione, once you start using it, we want you to use it in 30 days.
Okay.
So now unopened in the fridge, it's got a 2-year shelf life. But once you open it, you're taking the glutathione, and air is going back into the bottle, and the air is starting to react with the glutathione. And you keep it in the fridge, and you get about 30 days before it starts making excess hydrogen
people
sulfide.
know, because some people they forget. It sits in the fridge for 6 months, and they're like, oh, I've seen that.
They take it, and they're like, this tastes terrible. Well, it's like, well, read the directions. It's on the bottle.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's that one. But other ones, you can open them and have them for 6 months open, and they'll be fine.
All right. Depends. Just read directions.
Yeah, read the directions.
Also, you have incredible Quinton, seaweed Quinton. There is a 2-1, which is the yellow one and the silver one. What's the difference? So why it's so
Quinton
important?
Marine Plasma is a very old French product.
Yep.
It's water harvested from off the coast of France in a specific area where there's an upwelling of ancient water. So there's water coming from the ocean floor that's been coming north from the Antarctic up north and along the sea floor. It's this big global conveyor system, and it comes up off the coast of France and brings all these minerals, and the phytoplankton bloom in all of that nutrient-rich water, and then the zooplankton bloom above it. And so they find out where this bloom is, and it's really cool. You can see it from space space. It's a vortex. And so it's spiralic, and it's coming up and getting bigger and bigger, and you can actually see that. It looks like a galaxy from space. They go into the middle of that, find the level between the phytoplankton and zooplankton, pull out the water, and filter sterilize it. Never heat it. Raw, filter sterilized. And there's all these phytochemicals from the phytoplankton that are doing things on their own, or they're complexing the minerals, and you have all the minerals of the periodic table in there. And, we think a lot about these different minerals we use in large amounts, like zinc and copper and magnesium, but it turns out there's everything you need
in there.
in tiny amounts for a lot of gene transcription. And this guy, René Canton, started doing that in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and was healing all kinds of disease that was happening at the time that was really a malnutrition problem. And so they have the hypertonic and isotonic. So these glass vials, hypertonic is straight seawater, and the salinity there is 3.3% NaCl. So it's, if you took distilled water and added 3.3% by mass of sodium chloride, that would taste like seawater. That's the salt level in seawater. And so that's hypertonic, meaning more tonic than your blood plasma. Isotonic is the same tonic or same salinity as the blood plasma, and that's 0.9%. So that's seawater diluted with spring water down to 0.9. Now, interestingly, these two things have different effects on the body. It's the same product, different dilutions. And the hypertonic kind of stimulates and tonifies your body. You'll see your heart rate variability reflect your autonomics getting a little bit more sympathetic. And that doesn't mean you're going to fight or flight. It just means you're a little toned up and you're ready to do stuff. And it's remineralizing and energizing, so we tend to do that in the morning. And then the isotonic, you take that, hold that in your mouth, and you'll see your heart rate variability shift to a more parasympathetic tone. And so we do that at night. It's more of a healing one. It brings up immune function. It turns up drainage. And that was a big thing in European medicine, was drainage. And that's movement of the lymph through the extracellular space. It's movement through the kidneys and urination. It's drainage is the bile flow out of the liver. And so it's really good for opening that up. And so you get the extracellular matrix drainage and the kidney drainage. And it used to be used as an injectable. It would be injected sub-Q, IM, be nebulized, be IV'd. And they still do that in Europe. But the French pharmacopoeia kicked it out in like the 80s or something, and they made it into a dietary supplement. And so now we take it orally, and it's just a fantastic product with hundreds of years of research. In fact, there was like the first real epigenetics study. They took a lot. It was several hundred women who had 5 miscarriages or more, and they gave them Quinton before their next pregnancy and all the way through the pregnancy, and 95% of them carried the babies to term. And they followed the baby's health for like 15 years. We call them Quinton babies. And like anybody in our ecosystem that gets pregnant, it's like, you're on Quinton now. Make a Quinton baby.
Yep.
I mean, think of that.
I was actually, I think my baby is a Quinton baby, because I was taking Quinton before I got pregnant. I was taking while I was pregnancy, yes.
And it really makes a difference.
Yep.
I mean, look at that. From 5 miscarriages to get into the study
Incredible.
to 95% of them carrying the first term.
You've helped people with things like autism, Lyme, and chronic fatigue. Which product or system do you consider most underrated for those cases?
Well, autism, it's push-catch liver detox with CBD or GABA. You need to calm the system and then drain it. In the Lyme system, there's Cryptocomax is the best one there because it's the most broad. It's got Cryptolepis, it's got artemisinin and Japanese knotweed, and those are able to work on Babesia, Bartonella, and Borrelia all at once. Works on a lot of other chronic infections and parasites as well. And the thing that people often miss to go with that is biofilm breaker, and my favorite is EDTA. We think EDTA is about lead chelation, but EDTA is a fantastic biofilm breaker, especially when you have neurolyme. It gets up into the brain, and opens up the biofilm so that the cryptocomax can go in and kill things, but it also has an effect disassembling aggregations of proteins like that you get in Alzheimer's and a lot of these post-COVID things. There's a lot of things that you'll see in microscopy, these structures in there, and EDTA breaks those up. So those are amazing. And then in chronic fatigue, it's a little all of these things because you have to, there's usually a high viral load in there, and so our cat's claw VMAX is a big one in there. You might have to do some, antimicrobials along with detox at the same time, and then NAD being a big driver for getting the energy back up in the system.
Beautiful. If someone wants to start with one Quicksilver protocol, where should they begin and why?
Well, that's taking all the people in the world and putting them into one box. So what is the easiest box to stuff everybody into? And we have something called the pre-tox box. And if, like for some people, they jump into the push catch and it's a little too much for them, they're a little blocked up, they need to open up all the drainage first without dumping the cellular stores into the blood. And that's what the pre-tox box does. And it also repairs the gut at the same time.
Do you think liposomal delivery will remain the gold standard, or are we heading towards something even bigger?
No, we'll dial it in a little bit more. And then for different compounds, it's having awareness that water solubles use liposomes, fat and alcohol solubles use nanoemulsions, and then there's stuff that we could put in these capsules, and just broadening out the types of particles so that you can have them optimized for each molecule you're trying to deliver. And I think where we're really going to see liposomes shine is in these new peptide worlds. So the peptide deliveries without the needle, those are really going to be spectacular.
What do you wish more doctors and health coaches understood about detox, especially when it comes to absorption?
Yeah, I think I'd like them to understand that just taking a bunch of capsules and thinking everything is going to work is really wrong-headed, because you can use all the different compounds that I'm using in my push catch system in capsules, and some of them will absorb in an hour, some will take 2 hours, some will take 5 to 6 hours to peak in the blood. So when are you mobilizing the toxins and when are you binding? When do you take your binder then? And in the liposomal systems, everything goes in all at once, activates all this stuff. You take the binders out of that after that, and that ties the whole thing up. You're not draining toxins all day long. And, this is really an important thing. So you have to understand that people are all detoxing at different rates, and there are triggers you have to hit. There are things you have to couple together, and this system does it super accurately.
What are the most subtle signs that someone needs a detox protocol, even if they think they're healthy?
Yeah, everybody thinks, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. All of a sudden they're sick. They're like, well, how'd I get here? It's like, well, because you were toxic. And so what was the question
So
again?
the question, what are the most subtle signs that someone can feel?
So some of them that you see, fatigue, brain fog, you might have joint pains, GI pain, skin shows it a lot. You open up liver and clear toxins out, your skin really opens up. So, brain fog, depression, anxiety, low energy, some pain and discomfort, that is almost always toxins.
What's one belief about health or detox that you've changed your mind about 10 years ago?
What I've changed my mind from how I believed 10 years ago?
Like in the last 10 years?
I might have, increased the importance of chronic infections and parasites in the body, and that while those are in there, it's hard to do detox real well, and you have to really go after those first or go at them at the same time. But if you're just going after detox and you've got a chronic microbial load, you'll be limited in how much detox you can do and how much better you can get the system. So you really have to front load addressing that.
And I always say test. How do you know if you have the parasites
Yeah.
and microbial pathogens? You gotta test.
You do have to test, but
gut.
parasites are notoriously the hardest thing to test for. And if it's a microbe you don't know, you only can test for what you think is in there and what you have to test for. So there's a lot
So you
of stuff
just say,
that's
just
hard.
go ahead every 6 months.
Well,
Take
I mean,
your-
if you can't afford that, but there are good infection panels that look at a lot of different chronic infections, and that is a great thing to do, at least once and see what you're working on there. Parasites, you can do parasite tests. Usually, old microscopy is a little better than these gene ones, and it's worth doing, but you won't necessarily find them. You might, but you might not.
Interesting. If someone's burnt out, inflamed, and foggy, what are 3 things you would tell them today to start redefining their system?
Burned out, inflamed, and foggy. So you've got long-term inflammatory reactions happening there. And so you need to control. You're probably hyper-reacting to things. Now, there's a lot of ways to go at that. I think the peptides might be even the strongest way. So chronically having leaky gut has you have chronic endotoxicity, which is burning out your adrenals and your ability to put the anti-inflammatory things like cortisol out that make you feel better. And so sometimes you got to mess around a little bit. You got to try some histamine control and see where the inflammation is coming from. But the BPC 157 with KPV is going to seal up the gut and give you the best chances to get in and really work the system. Now, in that set, I would use BPC KPV, I would use NAD platinum and ergothione, and see what that does for you, because that's going to clear out free radicals. It's going to turn up mitochondrial efficiency, and it's going to seal up the leaky gut. And often that will do a whole lot towards bringing you up above the water and making you feel good.
All right. If you had unlimited resources, what would be the moonshot project you'd be pursued to change the future of human health?
I would probably go after cancer research. Different ways to work with cancers using natural medicines and a blend of naturals and pharmaceuticals. That's known to be a dangerous territory, but if it's a moonshot, we're going to do it.
You've studied toxins, detox, and cellular resilience. What do toxins teach us about the body's ability to adapt and heal?
Yeah, toxins teach us that we have an adaptability, a resilience to get past them, but at a certain point, up to a certain point. And after this certain point, they really start pulling the whole system down. And one of the things that is that they affect the mind stream, and they poison the mind stream and people's reaction to things. In fact, we call it a toxic reaction when people are just blowing up at you for no reason. It's like, well, what kind of things are up there in your head now? And they actually perpetuate the mental states that lock them in and block their detoxification. So when mercury works on the glutamate receptors in the brain, glutamate receptors, when they get hyperactivated, cause anxiety. Anxiety is you going into fight or flight autonomics, which blocks detoxification and holds the metal in there. And so it's almost they perpetuate those negative mental states. And when you're in those toxic negative mental states, you can't heal. And so, it's like many things, they're problems that just perpetuate itself, and you have to recognize them and break those bonds and get free of that.
What's one practice you would never skip, even when you're at the busiest time, and something that grounds you?
Well, the sauna, infrared sauna with push catch, that push sauna catch is the most foundational thing that I do to keep myself running through this world and doing things. I don't detox well, I accumulate infections, so I got to keep after that stuff all the time. And so that's probably the biggest one. But every day, there's some meditation or contemplation allowing the mind to be in a clear, quiet space. And that's one of the most fundamental things for health. The constantly running mind is never going back to resetting and healing.
What's something people would be surprised to learn about you?
I have a Tibetan monk that lives at my house.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's so cool. Love that.
Yeah, I'm part of
that's why he's teaching
Tibetan
you to
Buddhist
meditate.
lineages. Yeah, well, I mean, I've been doing it for about 30 years. And so I just happened, he was in the same lineage I was in and, vaguely knew my teacher. And just a couple of things happened all at once. We had fires in Colorado. My house, I got divorced. I moved into a house. It burned down in those fires. And I ended up renting a really big house. And at the same time, somebody introduced me to this monk who was looking for a new place to live. And he was part of this lineage I was already part of. And I was like, hey, come over here. And then he came and moved into my house.
You should meet my friend, a laughing monk. He's been actually one of the longest who've been in the caves meditating over 30 years.
Oh, geez.
He's here in LA right now. But
Cave yogi.
Yeah, I mean, he's incredible.
That.
You should meet him
Is
too.
it Tibetan lineage?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I like that.
I'll introduce you to
Yeah,
it.
totally do.
If you could go back in time and talk to your 30-year-old self, what would you want him to know?
Oh, geez. Work smarter, not harder. There's a certain amount of push that you do to get things forward that's more than the system can even handle, that you pull back your activity 20% and you'll live so much better and happier, and maybe the productivity goes down like 2%, and so we tend to just slam ourselves into the things we're trying to grow, and they can only grow at so much of a pace.
That's true, and more sleep.
Yeah.
If listeners remember just 3 things from this conversation, what would you want them to take away?
Inflammation and detoxification are fundamental opposites, and inflammation is blocking detoxification, building up toxins that generate more inflammation. So that's a cycle you have to break. Inflammation itself is the leading cause of aging. It is underneath aging. And so our focus on controlling the immune system and how it expresses inflammation correctly is one of the most fundamentally important things that we can do in our longevity and wellness journeys. And the mind stream and how your thoughts go is one of the most fundamental underpinnings of health. We are always pulled into a fear or anger-based fight or flight, survival, and as the more we think over things, the more we're locking in, we call it reifying in Tibetan traditions, we're making these things that are really paranoias in our head, we're starting to make them real, and we're creating a lot of impediments to our own growth and health, because we have to be back in that Zen parasympathetic rest, digest, repair, regenerate, detoxify in order to have healing. So the thoughts that you cultivate, if they're negative thoughts, they're locking you over into the sympathetic fight or flight side, and they're keeping you away from the healing side. So the thoughts that we cultivate and the silence that we cultivate is where our space for true healing comes from.
Beautiful. Well, I'm so grateful for this incredible conversation. I definitely learned a lot myself today. And your products from Quicksilver, it's a one-time shop stop for everything,
Yes.
to be in the greatest health that the world can have. And I wish everyone to really dive deep and learn more about your product. I definitely been taking it for a long time myself, and I'm going to add even more so.
Yes.
And teach my clients and my audience. It's great to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Natalie. I loved it.
Dr. Shea, thank you for sharing your insight, your journey, and the science behind the powerful protocols that are helping so many people feel like themselves again. To everyone listening, I hope this episode gave you a fresh lens on what it really means to detox, not just to remove, but to restore, repair, and truly thrive from the inside out. If you want to explore more of Dr. Shade's work or try Quicksilver Scientific's formulas for yourself, you'll find all the links in the description below. Use my code. As always, thank you for tuning in. Stay curious, stay vibrant, and remember, wellness is life.